Kevin Stefanski didn't lose the locker room, he lost the stage. When Shedeur Sanders' $100 million endorsement deal was announced mid-press conference, the Browns coach stood frozen, caught in a moment that instantly redefined the NFL's balance of power. His awkward, stammering reaction was broadcast everywhere, not just as a meme but as a symbol of a coach rendered obsolete.
If you're into the real story and all the messy twists they don't show on highlight reels, go ahead and subscribe. And if you're sticking around to see how this Browns QB chaos plays out, you should definitely be subscribed.
It wasn't just a financial bombshell, it was a public execution of authority, televised in real time. In that moment, it became clear the Browns weren't Stefanski's team anymore. Sanders had flipped the script, establishing himself not only as a franchise quarterback, but as a business entity too big to control. The front office's failure to anticipate or align with this power shift exposed deeper cracks in vision, culture, and leadership. Stefanski may still hold the title, but his authority? That ended before the cameras stopped rolling. One press conference. One announcement. And just like that, the power dynamics inside the Cleveland Browns organization collapsed on live television. Shedeur Sanders, with the casual confidence of someone who already knew what this moment meant, dropped the bombshell. A $100 million endorsement deal. The room fell silent. Except for the cameras. And the sound of Kevin Stefanski's career unraveling in real time. No one expected it to go down like that. Not in front of reporters. Not with the team watching. Not during what was supposed to be just another standard media availability. But that's exactly what made it so seismic. This wasn't just about money, it was about control, influence, leverage. And Stefanski? He wasn't ready. His reaction said everything. The strained smile. The slow blink. The awkward glance toward ownership. It went viral in seconds. And for good reason. Because it wasn't just uncomfortable, it was symbolic. A head coach, suddenly exposed as powerless in front of a quarterback who no longer needed validation from the franchise. And that was the real headline. Not the deal. Not the number. But what it represented. This wasn't just a payday. It was a declaration of independence. Shedeur Sanders now had something most rookies don't. Freedom. Financial freedom. Brand control. Leverage that extended beyond the locker room and into the business world. While most first-year quarterbacks are still trying to secure their footing, Sanders stepped into the NFL with an empire already forming around him. Apparel, energy drinks, crypto, automotive, media, and all of it on his terms. That level of autonomy? It shattered every old-school NFL structure in sight. Because how do you coach a player who doesn't need the team the way the team needs him? How do you manage someone whose influence stretches past football, whose personal brand could outlast the franchise if things go south? That's the tension that boiled over in Cleveland. Shedeur's deal didn't just mark the start of a new chapter. It exposed everything that was broken behind the scenes. The fractures between ownership and coaching staff. The lack of alignment. The outdated leadership that couldn't keep up with the moment. It wasn't just a generational gap. It was a systems failure. Kevin Stefanski, once considered a stabilizing figure, suddenly looked out of place. Obsolete. Not because he was a bad coach, but because the game around him had changed and he hadn't. The NFL has been slowly shifting toward player empowerment for years, but this was a full reset. A quarterback asserting independence before ever being named the official starter. That level of power on that stage left Stefanski with nowhere to hide. And now the whispers are getting louder. That this was the moment his tenure effectively ended. Not with a press release. Not with a losing season. But with one press conference where the spotlight shifted and never came back. Analysts are already circling. Commentators pointing to the body language, the viral clips, the reports of internal tension that followed. Because once authority is publicly questioned like that, it's hard to restore. And in the NFL? Perception is reality. The Browns are suddenly staring down a full-blown organizational crisis. What started as a branding announcement turned into a referendum on leadership. Ownership interference, coaching instability, locker room fractures. Everything was exposed. And the common thread through all of it? A team that wasn't prepared for what Shedeur Sanders represents. He's not just a quarterback. He's a brand. A strategist. A player who came into the league already knowing his worth, not just in yards or wins but in cultural relevance, media reach, and economic impact. And he timed it perfectly. Announcing the deal during training camp? That was no accident. It positioned him as both a player and a headline. A quarterback and a cultural force. And while the front office was still caught up in managing depth charts and PR scripts, Sanders had already launched the next phase of his career. This wasn't ego. It was execution. Shedeur's team understood something that the Browns didn't. Control the narrative and you control the power. And with one deal, one stage, and one stunned head coach, that power shift was official. It's forcing a lot of uncomfortable conversations, not just in Cleveland but across the league. Because if Shedeur can do this as a rookie, what happens next? What happens when more top college players start building empires before they're drafted? What happens when endorsement portfolios outweigh rookie contracts? What happens when players walk into team facilities already backed by millions in outside revenue and a direct line to millions of fans? It changes everything. Suddenly, the coach-QB dynamic isn't the same. The old-school structure, coach at the top, player underneath, starts to invert. Teams can't lean on financial leverage because these players don't need the salary to survive. They can't threaten benching as a motivator because the real value isn't just on the field, it's in the brand. And that terrifies some organizations. The Browns clearly were not ready. Now they're scrambling. Stefanski's authority is eroding. Ownership is under fire for failing to manage the optics. And the front office is stuck in the middle trying to figure out whether to double down or blow it all up. Some insiders say a coaching change is inevitable. That there's no way Stefanski survives after being publicly sidelined in his own building. Others believe Sanders will use this moment to push for structural changes. More input, more flexibility, maybe even personnel say. And honestly, he's in a position to get all of it. Because Shedeur isn't just valuable, he's valuable in a new way. He brings money, media, and relevance. Merch sales spike when his name trends. Sponsors follow his image, not the franchise. And in a league that's trying to grow younger, more digital, more global, that kind of influence is priceless. Which makes the stakes even higher. If the Browns can't get it together, if they cling to their old school model, they risk losing more than just games. They risk losing the player who could have made them matter for the next decade. There's already talk about what happens if Shedeur asks for a trade. What teams would throw the bank at him? What cities would welcome not just the quarterback but the brand? And while nothing's official, the very fact that it's being discussed tells you everything about how unstable things have become. And it's not just about Shedeur. It's about what he represents. A new kind of player. A new kind of power. And a league that's going to have to make some hard adjustments, or get left behind. The question now is simple. Does Cleveland evolve or collapse? Because there's no middle ground anymore. This press conference, this deal, it forced a decision. You either restructure around the new reality or you get buried by it. Shedeur Sanders just showed the NFL what the future looks like. And the Browns, ready or not, are now the first franchise forced to deal with it, live on camera in front of the world. So what happens next? Does Stefanski stay? Does he go? Does Sanders step further into a leadership role or start looking for a franchise that sees the future the way he does? Those answers are coming. Fast. But one thing's already certain. This moment changed the game. If you've been watching this unfold and wondering where it goes next, drop your take in the comments. Is this the beginning of a new era, or the end of an old one? And if you want more deep dives into the NFL's most dramatic power shifts, organizational meltdowns, and player-driven revolutions, make sure to subscribe. Because what happened in Cleveland? That was the spark. And the fire's only just started. What Shedeur Sanders did wasn't a one-off. It wasn't just a stunt. It was a power play that put the entire NFL on notice. Coaches, GMs, owners, everyone just got a preview of what the next generation of quarterbacks is going to look like. And the message was crystal clear. The era of total team control is over. This $100 million deal? It's not about Shedeur flexing for headlines. It's about leverage, control, autonomy. He didn't just get paid, he shifted the balance of power. For decades, franchises have dictated the terms. They draft you, they own the narrative, and they set the expectations. That script just got shredded on live television. And for Kevin Stefanski, that moment was more than awkward. It was career-defining. Because when the head coach of an NFL franchise, already under pressure, already hearing whispers about locker room disconnect, gets blindsided in a press conference by his own quarterback's business announcement, he's lost the room. You can't lead a locker room if you're the last to know. You can't be the guy if the players are looking to someone else for vision and influence. And after this press conference, it's obvious. Shedeur's the one holding the remote. And he didn't need to say a word about leadership or team dynamics. The moment said it for him. Because Stefanski's reaction, unprepared, caught off guard, visually stunned, was more than just a meme. It became a symbol of the larger dysfunction happening inside that building. A team that clearly wasn't aligned. A front office that let their coach walk into a press conference with no clue what was about to drop. Ownership that either enabled the chaos or failed to control it. And a roster watching it all unfold in real time. That's not just embarrassing. That's a breakdown. And what followed was exactly what you'd expect. Media firestorm, social media eruption, and front office panic. Analysts dissecting every frame of Stefanski's reaction. Talk shows debating whether Sanders should be calling shots at all. Anonymous reports leaking that the locker room had already shifted its loyalty. And the word unfixable started circling. Because when things play out that publicly, when your coach gets exposed in front of the entire NFL world, it's nearly impossible to walk it back. You can't control the narrative once it's already gone viral. You can't reassert authority once it's been stripped on camera. This wasn't just a cultural shift. It was a hostile takeover. And let's be honest, this didn't come out of nowhere. The Browns have been teetering on the edge of an identity crisis for years. A revolving door of quarterbacks, questionable coaching hires, ownership meddling, public controversies. And now they have a generational talent on their roster, one who isn't waiting around for permission. Shedeur Sanders didn't walk in hoping to fit the mold. He walked in to redefine it. He's not trying to earn leverage with a few good games. He already has it. Not just because of his performance potential, but because of his brand, his platform, his ability to drive headlines, drive engagement, and drive revenue. That's the scariest part for traditional NFL execs. He doesn't need the team the way they need him. Most rookies are playing for that second contract. For stability. For relevance. But Shedeur? He's already there. He's playing for legacy. For positioning. For control. And when a player walks in with that much power at his fingertips, the playbook changes. Suddenly, the coaches aren't the only voice in the building. And that's what Stefanski realized in that moment. He's no longer in charge. The shift in dynamics is undeniable now. The quarterback isn't just the face of the franchise. He is the franchise. And in Shedeur's case, he's the business model too. A self-contained brand with influence that stretches across industries. Sponsors don't just care if he wins games, they care if he posts, if he speaks, if he trends. That changes how decisions are made. That changes who gets input. That changes who actually runs the show. And the Browns? They were clearly caught off guard. Which is wild, considering they should have seen this coming. This wasn't a surprise move. This was the logical evolution of everything Sanders had already been doing. From his nil deals in college to his social media dominance to his public messaging, this wasn't a player trying to stay in line. This was a player building an empire. And Cleveland's front office? They either didn't believe it or they ignored it. Either way, they lost control. And now they're scrambling to pick up the pieces. There's talk of an internal reshuffling. Front office rifts. Stefanski's job security isn't just in question, it's likely already decided. He's done. Because after a moment that public, you don't come back with a team that clearly sees someone else as the real power figure in the room. The question now is whether Cleveland can salvage anything from this moment. Can they rally around Shedeur? Can they structure the organization in a way that supports, not controls, him? Can they shift fast enough to avoid becoming the cautionary tale for every other team facing the new wave of athlete empowerment? Because make no mistake, this is the new standard. Shedeur Sanders isn't a glitch in the system. He is the system now. And other players are watching. Future draft picks are watching. Agents are watching. The next wave of quarterbacks are building their brands right now, some before they've even taken a college snap, looking at what Sanders just did and thinking, that's the model. And the league? It has a choice, adapt or collapse. Organizations that embrace the shift, teams that give players agency, that align leadership with athlete empowerment, that understand brand as currency, those are the teams that are going to thrive in the next decade. The rest? They'll cling to old-school hierarchy. They'll pretend the coach still has full control. They'll try to suppress the influence of players who already have a larger reach than the team itself. And they'll get left behind. Cleveland now sits at the center of that fork in the road. They can lean in. They can back Shedeur. They can retool the leadership structure, clean house, and build something modern. Something player-driven. Something sustainable. Or they can fall apart. Because the one option that no longer exists is ignoring what just happened. Shedeur Sanders just detonated the blueprint. And Kevin Stefanski, through no real fault of his own, became the first casualty of the new NFL order. And that should be a warning to every team still pretending that player branding is a sideshow. It's not. It's the main event now. It determines sponsorships, fan engagement, media coverage, locker room dynamics, and most of all, leverage. Shedeur's $100 million deal didn't just announce his arrival. It announced a new era. So what happens next? That depends on whether the NFL is ready to face itself in the mirror. Because the traditional power structure? It just got flipped, on camera, in front of every franchise, every fanbase, every executive. Here's the uncomfortable truth the front office can't dodge anymore. Shedeur Sanders now has more cultural capital than the organization that drafted him. Let that sink in. A rookie quarterback, without a single NFL start, has already become more valuable as a brand, as a voice, and as a revenue driver than the franchise that's supposed to be shaping him. And the Browns? They never saw it coming. They thought they were getting a quarterback. They didn't realize they were getting a movement. Now they're scrambling to control a narrative they were never ready to write. Stefanski's stunned face at that press conference wasn't just about being blindsided, it was the realization that the power structure had shifted under his feet, and there was no going back. Because once the quarterback becomes the show, the coach becomes the support act. You could feel the panic in how Cleveland responded in the days that followed. Anonymous leaks about internal discussions. Vague evaluations of Stefanski's future. Carefully worded statements about alignment. But you can't PR spin your way out of a public implosion. The whole world saw it. And no amount of sanitized messaging is going to put that genie back in the bottle. Especially when that genie just signed the biggest rookie endorsement deal in league history, and did it on his own terms. Let's talk about that deal because it wasn't just record-breaking in numbers. It was revolutionary in structure. Sanders didn't just license his name, he retained ownership. He negotiated creative control. He ensured crossover in industries that don't traditionally play ball with football players. Crypto, automotive, beverage, apparel, and most importantly, media. This wasn't about slapping his face on a billboard. It was about building infrastructure. That's what the Browns missed. This wasn't just about Shedeur making money. It was about Shedeur building something bigger than the franchise. And now they're stuck trying to figure out how to coach a player who's already operating as a CEO. This isn't the league your dad grew up with. This is the era of the content quarterback. The self-managed, digitally native, globally aware athlete who's not just playing for wins, he's playing for equity. And that changes everything. Because if you're the Browns, how do you discipline a quarterback who brings in more sponsors than the team itself? How do you develop someone who's already outgrown your model? How do you manage a locker room where your star player doesn't need the organization to survive? That's the existential crisis playing out in Berea right now. Some teams would embrace it. They'd restructure their leadership model around the player. They'd hire creative staff to support content. They'd align PR with brand strategy. They'd invest in infrastructure that supports, not stifles, player entrepreneurship. Cleveland? They're trying to hold the dam together with duct tape. And every new report about Stefanski's dwindling influence just confirms what we already know. His tenure is toast. Not because he failed as a coach, but because he failed to see the shift. He kept trying to run an old system in a new world. And when the spotlight hit, he froze. Now Shedeur holds the keys to the franchise. Not because he demanded it, but because he earned it by playing a smarter game than the people above him. This is what athlete independence looks like in 2025. It's not just showing up and putting in work, it's crafting your narrative before anyone else can. It's building leverage before the first snap. It's entering the league already fully formed, with a brand, a message, a revenue stream, and a loyal audience. That's the new baseline. And Shedeur just said it. What we're seeing now is the ripple effect. Other rookies are watching this play out and taking notes. Agents are adjusting their approach. College athletes are hiring branding teams. Draft picks are evaluating teams not just on roster fit, but media alignment and player empowerment. That's how big this moment was. And for the Browns, that means the clock is ticking. Because this isn't just about winning games anymore, it's about evolving fast enough to keep up with your quarterback. The organization has two choices: adapt or bleed out. Adapt means overhauling your culture. It means replacing outdated leadership. It means giving Shedeur a seat at the table, not as a player but as a partner. It means acknowledging that influence matters just as much as talent. Bleed out means clinging to power structures that no longer hold. Keeping Stefanski. Ignoring the branding machine. Forcing Shedeur into a mold that was shattered the second he signed that deal. And worst of all, losing the locker room. Because make no mistake, the locker room has already chosen sides. And it's not because they're starstruck. It's because players respect leverage. They respect someone who can walk into the building and set the tone. And right now, Sanders is doing that without even taking a snap. That's the clearest sign yet that Cleveland is behind the curve. Because if the players are already looking to the quarterback for direction, not the coach, it's game over. Culture isn't what's on the wall in the team facility. It's what people believe when the cameras are off. And right now they believe Shedeur is the future. So what happens next? Stefanski will quietly exit. Whether it's this season or mid-season, the outcome is inevitable. You can't coach a player with more public influence than you. You can't maintain control when the world has already seen you lose it. Then comes the restructure. The Browns will either double down on Shedeur as the cornerstone of their new identity, or they'll bungle the moment and force a trade that will haunt the franchise for a decade. There is no middle ground. Because this is bigger than the Browns now. It's about the league. It's about the next 5 years of NFL identity. The era of team first, brand last is done. The players are the product. The players are the business. And Shedeur Sanders is proof of concept. If you're an owner, a GM, or a coach watching this play out, you're not just watching a meltdown. You're watching a prototype. This is what the quarterback of the future looks like. Confident, strategic, media literate, and most importantly, unbought. Let that sit. Because it means the NFL has to evolve faster than it ever has before. The old way: draft, coach, control, sell. The new way: sign, support, collaborate, amplify. And if you're not willing to make that switch, you'll be the next team trending for all the wrong reasons. So now the spotlight is back on Cleveland. One decision, one franchise, one quarterback who already broke the mold. Can they adapt? Or are they just another cautionary tale? You already know what we think. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Should the Browns rebuild their franchise model around Shedeur, or are they headed straight for another front office disaster? And if you want more brutally honest breakdowns of power, money, and chaos in pro sports, hit that subscribe button. Because this story is just getting warmed up. And next time the NFL shifts again, you'll want to say you saw it coming.